The concept of acceleration. In daily life, we come across the word accelerate. What happens when you accelerate a vehicle? Yes, its velocity increases. You do the reverse, then what happens? The velocity will decrease. That is, the acceleration is a term which relates to change in velocity. Either velocity may increase or decrease. Simply, the acceleration is the change in velocity in unit time. That means acceleration is equivalent to change in velocity by time. Now the question is, what is change in velocity? To understand this, we take some examples. An object moving with velocity 3 meter per second linearly, if velocity becomes 4 meter per second, again it is moving in the same direction. What is its change in velocity? Yeah, simply v2 minus v1, that is 4 minus 3. This is equal to 1 meter per second. Suppose we consider it is moving with velocity 3 meter per second and its velocity changes to minus 4 meter per second. Then what is change in velocity? Minus 4 minus 3, this is equal to minus 7 meters per second. Now the question is, what this sign indicates? Here we are discussing the motion along a straight line. When a body is moving along a straight line, in how many directions it can move? Either it can move in forward direction or in backward direction. If we consider forward is positive, then backward is negative. That means suppose we consider an object is moving along an axis. Suppose if I take x-axis from origin, this is positive x-axis, this is negative x-axis. When it moves in this direction, the values are positive. When it moves in this direction, the values are negative. Initially, it is moving with velocity 3 meter per second means it is moving in this direction. The velocity becomes minus 4 meter per second. That means the final direction of the body is in this direction. One thing we have to remember, velocity is a vector quantity. While discussing velocity, we have to consider the magnitude as well as the direction of velocity. Simply giving the magnitude cannot explain the velocity perfectly. There's positive and negative signs. These indicates the direction of the motion. Now we consider another example. An object is moving towards east, having velocity 4 meters per second. Suppose if I take this, if it is moving towards west, then what we have to write velocity? Okay, towards east we are considering positive. Therefore, towards west we have to consider negative. That means we have to write the velocity is minus 4 meters per second. Similarly, an object is moving towards north, has velocity 5 meters per second. If it is moving towards the south, then what is its velocity? Minus 5 meters per second. Why? Because we are considering towards north is positive, hence towards south is automatically negative. And you take another problem. An object moving with velocity 3 meter per second towards east, then changes its velocity to 4 meters per second towards west. Then what is change in velocity? Initially it is moving with velocity 3 meters per second towards east. This velocity is positive. The final velocity is towards west. This is opposite to east. We have to take minus, that is minus 4 meters per second. Therefore, the change in velocity is minus 4 minus 3, that is equal to minus 7 meters per second, and the minus sign indicates towards west. And we take another one. An object moving with velocity 4 meters per second towards north, its velocity changes to 3 meter per second towards south. Then what is change in velocity? Here also we are taking north positive, south negative. Initial velocity is 4 meters per second. This is having positive sign, and the final velocity is negative sign. Why? Because it is towards south. Therefore, the change in velocity is minus 3 minus 4. This is equal to minus 7 meters per second. Now I take another problem. A body moving 3 meters per second towards east turns to north and moving with same velocity. Now what is change in velocity? Can we say the change in velocity is 0? There is no change in velocity. Is the velocity is changed or not? Yes, in magnitude it is not changed, but its direction is changed. Initially it is moving towards east and it turns to north. Since velocity is a vector quantity, while discussing about velocity, we have to consider the magnitude as well as the direction. Initially it is moving towards east, and now it changes to north. That means we can say the velocity direction is changed. Okay, in previous problems, since we consider the motion is in one dimension, we have taken plus or minus. But in this case, it is turning to north means the motion becomes two dimensional. The motion of the body is in two dimension. Then we have to consider the concept of vectors. Already you studied how to add the vectors, how to subtract the vectors. This is initial velocity v1, this is a vector, and this is final velocity v2. Now the change in velocity is nothing but vector v2 minus vector v1, the magnitude root of v1 square plus v2 square minus 2v1 v2 cos theta, which is given by parallelogram law of vector addition. Since the final direction is perpendicular to initial direction, theta is 90, then v2 minus v1, this is equal to root of v1 square plus v2 square. Now this is equal to root of 3 square plus 3 square. It becomes 3 root 2 meters per second. And the direction is towards northwest. Say here, this is the initial direction of v1 and this is v2. To find v2 minus v1 using triangle of vectors, just you draw v2 and draw the projection of minus v1 here at the end of this v2. Then you get this side which closes the triangle, the resultant of v2 and minus v1, or this gives the difference of v2 and v1. The same thing you can do using parallelogram law of vectors. Okay, that we discussed already in previous sections. Now we go for the concept of acceleration. Our final idea is change in velocity means it may change in magnitude, it may change in direction, it may change in both magnitude and direction. And the acceleration is equivalent to change in velocity by time. Therefore, a body is having acceleration means its velocity changes. The change may be in magnitude or in direction or in both. Any one of this is possible. If the magnitude changes, we can consider it is having acceleration. If the direction is changed, then also it is having acceleration. If both changes, then also it is having acceleration. Now to understand this, we take a problem. An object moving with velocity 5 meters per second linearly. Its velocity changes to 7 meters per second in 2 seconds and moves in the same direction. Now what is change in velocity? Yes, it is 7 minus 5, both are positive. It is equal to 2 meters per second. By sign, can we say velocity is changing with respect to direction? No, there is no change in velocity with respect to direction. Yet the velocity change in magnitude. Next, what is acceleration of the body? Acceleration is nothing but change in velocity by time, that is 7 minus 5 by 2, this is equal to 1 meter per second square. Now in which direction acceleration is there? Since the velocity changes along positive x direction, In the same direction, acceleration is acting. If the direction of acceleration is opposite to the initial velocity, then what happens? If the acceleration is opposite to initial motion, then what happens? Opposite to this means acceleration is negative. The velocity will decrease. It decreases to zero. Again, in this direction, acceleration is acting, velocity increases in opposite direction.